Welcome to Damn Good Advice. I'm Chris Lisenik. I'm here with Amy Rudersdorf. Amy, thanks for joining me.
You bet.
Amy's our expert today, answering the tough questions. So we had a person write in response to our Damn Good Advice newsletter, and they essentially asked the question, how do I know when I've outgrown my dam? So I wanted to turn to our dam selection expert, dam expert in general, Amy Rudersdorf, to help us get our heads around the answer to this question. So, Amy, any preliminary thoughts?
Yeah, I think the first thing to keep in mind is that technology problems aren't always the technology. That's not what's to blame, but it's really about the human side of asset management, things like governance or appropriate training. A new system's not going to fix those. But sometimes, the system can't keep up with your users or the data. And that's when you start to consider like leveling up to a new system. But first, look at the human impact on the system before you start looking at new vendors.
Yeah, that reminds me. Kara Van Melson, our colleague, of course, wrote a blog post. I think it was last year that was about don't always just blame the dam, and that was kind of saying, it can be other things. It can be governance, or it can be these other issues that can cause these problems. But sometimes it really is the dam. I mean,
Mhm.
there are outcomes. Well, you're doing everything right, and you really have outgrown your dam. So I'm wondering how can someone get to the bottom of that?
Yeah, I mean, there are some signs that things aren't working. And so I'm just going to lay out a couple of those. The first one is how you're using metadata, or really how you're misusing metadata. If the system wasn't built for your more complex metadata schemas, you're not going to succeed in building a robust search and things like that. So if you start saying things like, I don't know where to put that, just put it in the notes, or let's create a miscellaneous field or something like that, and that starts to indicate that maybe the system can't handle that. Another area to think about is workflows. If you're tracking workflows in spreadsheets or other systems beyond the dam, that that because the dam can't automate what you want to do, that's another indicator. So when
Mm.
you're saying things like I'll log it or I'll send you a note when it's done, those are things that a dam can do on your behalf. So if you're doing that manually, that's another good indicator.
Yeah,
Oh, did you want to?
I just was thinking or like you're doing oddball things because it doesn't support your file formats, or you're doing oddball things because it doesn't support your permission structures, right? So it's
Right.
like, okay, you just go to this person and ask this thing, then they'll share it in this strange way, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And it's all kinds of crazy workarounds.
Yeah, I think another one is like it's just faster if I keep my own copy. If it's more complicated to use the dam than to download and store a copy and then go back and find that copy, that tends to be an indicator too. And I think the other one I'll just point out is if you start sharing things outside the dam. So if you're like, I'm just going to use Dropbox for this one, or like SharePoint's always available, so I'll just use that instead. Now you're reducing the possibility of tracking usage, and things of that nature. And so you're not just losing the ability to track things, but to record and document and report out on how assets are being handled.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess just to your earlier point, first place to look is it a configuration thing? There's possible it is. Maybe you can configure the system differently,
Mhm.
but if you find that you can't, then that's where you know maybe I am outgrowing my system. Um,
Yeah, for sure.
And so, uh, I'm not sure of the role of the person that sent this in. Let's say it's a dam manager, someone that's, in charge of operating or owning the dam. Um, and I think a lot of these things in a sort of not malicious, but still yet sinister way kind of happen without folks knowing about it, right? Like,
Hmm.
so as a dam manager, how do you think you suss that out? How do you flesh out, like, one, that these problems are happening, and two, get to the bottom of whether it's a configuration issue or a kind of dam technology issue?
Yeah, well, I think a couple of things to point out there. One of them is that as the dam admin or manager, you need to be constantly thinking about change management and also ongoing improvements. So you should ideally have some sort of feedback form available to your users or some way for them to provide feedback. And so, if you hear the same complaints over and over again, you need to assess whether that's a system problem, a technical system problem, or an administrative problem.
Yeah.
I would also say if you as an administrator are building workarounds, thinking again about those workflows and, I'll log it and send you it when it's done. That's a problem too. So look inward and make sure that what you need to accomplish is happening. And then think about what's IT saying? Are you seeing scalability issues? Or are you finding that the current dam provider isn't giving you the support you need? Those would all be indicators that maybe you've outgrown the system.
Yeah. So engaging with users, frontline people using the system, get feedback, critically important. But
Yeah.
actually, I mean, as you're talking, I'm thinking, metrics and reporting could also give you signs that that might be a thing that your dam doesn't have. So if you need metrics and reporting and things for trying to track things and manage them, you don't have it. That could also be a sign that you might need to be thinking about. Uh,
Yes. I was just thinking, especially in the marketing world, so much of what is decisions are now based on data. And if you don't have the data coming out of your system, you can't make data driven decisions. So, yeah, if the system you have can't give you the reports you need, that's obviously a real detriment to your workflows and to your outcomes.
all right. Well, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I would say that if the same problems keep resurfacing, even when your governance is solid, when your change management is solid, then it's probably not just a user issue. It's probably a system limitation. And so I think that's when you need to start asking whether your dam is helping you grow or whether it's holding you back. And so beginning the work to start looking at what else is available out there is probably you're probably at that point now.
Okay. All right. Well, there you have it. A few hot takes from Amy Rudersdorf on answering the damn good advice question. Thanks, Amy, for joining me and helping us think about this problem. I hope it's useful for people out there.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.